The late afternoon sun poured through the blinds, painting long amber stripes across the oak floor of Officer Ethan Cole's new home. The scent of freshly cut grass drifted in from the yard, mingling with the faint aroma of coffee still sitting half-finished on the kitchen counter. For the first time in months, Ethan felt like he could breathe. After years of high-intensity service in the city, night shifts, domestic calls gone wrong, and streets that never seemed to sleep, this quiet suburban neighborhood felt like earned reward. Maplewood Estates was supposed to be peaceful, predictable, and polite. That's what the realtor promised. What the realtor didn't mention was Karen Whitmore. Karen was the self-declared watchdog of the Homeowners Association, a woman whose presence seemed to vibrate with self-importance. She had the precision of a military general and the friendliness of a parking ticket. Every morning she walked the neighborhood with her clipboard, inspecting lawns, fences, and mailboxes as if she were conducting a federal investigation. The first time Ethan met her, she didn't say, "Welcome to the neighborhood." She said, "You'll need to repaint that fence, it's a shade too dark for HOA standards." He had laughed it off then, figuring she was just overzealous. But it didn't stop there. Within days, he'd received 3 official violation notices, one for leaving his trash cans visible for more than the permitted 30 minutes, another for having a lawn mower visible from the street, and a third because, apparently, his curtains were off, white, instead of eggshell. He shrugged them off, not wanting to make enemies so soon. He was used to dealing with worse personalities in his line of work. But what he didn't know was that Karen wasn't used to being ignored. That particular afternoon, Ethan had finally clocked out from a grueling 2-day shift. He kicked off his boots, poured himself a drink, and collapsed onto the couch. His German shepherd, Max, curled up at his feet. For the first time, the house felt like a home, quiet save his. He planned on doing nothing more strenuous than taking a long shower and maybe ordering a pizza. He turned on some soft blues music, humming along as he undressed and stepped into the shower. The water was hot, washing away the exhaustion from his body. Steam fogged up the glass, and for the first time in weeks, his shoulders relaxed. He closed his eyes, letting the water run over his face, until he heard it. The faint creak of a door hit. He turned off the water, straining to listen. The noise came again. The sound of footsteps on hardwood. Not cautious ones, confident, purposeful. His instincts, honed from years of policing, kicked in instantly. Quietly he reached for his towel, wrapping it around his waist. His hand found the grip of the small backup firearm he kept hidden in a bathroom drawer. Moving soundlessly through the hallway, he could hear a faint voice muttering from the living room. When he reached the corner, he peeked around, and there she was. Karen Whitmore, HOA clipboard in hand, standing square in the middle of his living room like she owned the place. She was scribbling something on her papers, her lips pursed in concentration as she surveyed his decor. Approved drapes,
Compliant pet bed.
oh, and that lamp! Not within style guidelines for exterior window visibility. Ethan stared for a few seconds, stunned into silence. Was this woman actually in his house? "Excuse me," he finally said, voice low and controlled but carrying a sharp edge. Karen jumped, startled. Her pen clattered against her clipboard as she spun around. "Oh, you scared me," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. Ethan stepped forward, dripping water onto the floor, towel hanging loosely around his waist. "What are you doing in my house?" Karen blinked at him like the question was ridiculous. "Oh, don't get upset," she said briskly. "I'm performing a routine compliance inspection. In my living room." His tone hardened. "Well, technically, the HOA's jurisdiction extends to visible interior areas," she said, gesturing vaguely toward his window. "Your curtains are open, which means—" He cut her off. "You broke into my home." "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "I didn't break in. The door was unlocked." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "That's Naren," crossed her arms, posture rigid. "Look, as the head of the HOA, it's my job to ensure that all properties maintain community standards. I've had complaints from neighbors about the appearance of your front yard and possible unauthorized animals." Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "So you just walked into a police officer's home because you didn't like his dog bed?" "I didn't know you were a police officer," she said dismissively. "And besides, that's irrelevant. We have rules here. Everyone follows them, or else this neighborhood goes downhill fast." He took a slow breath, his patience thinning. "You think HOA regulations are more important than state law?" Karen's chin lifted defiantly. "In this neighborhood, yes. And if you're going to live here, officer or not, you'll need to learn that." Ethan turned toward a side table and opened a drawer. Karen, thinking she'd won the argument, scribbled another note on her clipboard. "You'll receive an official notice about these violations by the end of the week," she said smugly. "I'd recommend making the necessary changes to avoid fines." He ignored her, reaching into the drawer, and then turned back, holding up something that made her face drain of color. A polished police badge, gleaming gold in the fading sunlight. He held it up just high enough for her to see the nameplate Officer Ethan Cole, Metro Police Department. Karen blinked, her confidence flickering. "Oh, well, I didn't mean. You entered my home without permission," he said evenly, voice calm but cutting. "That's trespassing. Considering you opened my door and walked inside, it's also breaking and entering." Karen laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, you wouldn't actually. I was just doing my job." He took a step closer, eyes never leaving hers. "Your job doesn't give you legal authority to enter someone's private property. You're not law enforcement. You're a neighbor with a clipboard." "I'm the HOA president," she snapped. "Congratulations," he said dryly. "You've just earned yourself an arrest record if I decide to press charges." Karen's lips trembled. The air in the room thickened with tension. "You wouldn't dare. The HOA will back me up." Ethan raised his phone, opening his contacts. "Try me." Her smugness cracked, replaced by genuine panic. "Wait, you can't arrest me. I didn't do anything wrong. All you did," he said quietly. "You just don't realize how serious it is." He started dialing. Karen's voice wavered. "Please, let's be reasonable. I'm sure we can work this out. You don't need to call anyone." To lowered the phone for a moment, staring at her coldly. "If anyone else had done what you just did, they'd already be in handcuffs. But you know what? I'll give you one chance to walk out that door and you won't see me again, unless you step foot on my property again. Understand?" Karen swallowed hard, her face pale. "Why, yes." "Good," he said, stepping aside. "Get out." She scurried past him, clutching her clipboard to her chest, the clack of her heels echoing through the hallway. As the door shut behind her, Ethan exhaled slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. He dealt with criminals, liars, and con artists. But somehow, the HOA queen might just be the most audacious of them all. Red and blue wood estates in a surreal glow, bouncing off pristine white fences and manicured lawns. It was the most excitement the neighborhood had seen in years. Curtains fluttered as nosy neighbors peeked out, phones in hand, whispering and delaying top-secret information. The HOA president, Karen Whitmore, stood on Officer Ethan Cole's front porch, her face red with indignation and fear. Her clipboard was gone, replaced by trembling hands and a voice that couldn't decide whether to yell or plead. "I can't believe this," she hissed. "This is harassment. I was doing my duty." Ethan stood a few feet away, calm, collected, his badge glinting faintly under the flashing lights. He had changed in his uniform, pressed dark navy blue, the kind that seemed to command silence even from chaos. His expression was neutral, almost detached, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. It wasn't anger. It was professional disappointment, the kind that said, "You really did this to yourself." His partner, Officer Ramirez, leaned against the patrol car, chewing gum and trying to suppress a grin. "So let me get this straight," he said, flipping open his notepad. "She entered your house, no warrant, no permission, and started writing violation notes." Ethan nodded. "You got it." Karen gasped, offended. "It wasn't like that. I was performing a compliance inspection." He had multiple infractions visible from the street. "And as HOA president, I'm authorized to investigate further." Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Investigate further?" He gestured to the front door. "You mean walk into a cop's living room without knocking?" "I didn't walk in. The door was unlocked." Karen snapped. "That's practically an invitation." Ethan's jaw tightened. "No, it's not." Karen looked around, realizing the whole neighborhood was watching now. People had come out onto their lawns, some in pajamas, some with wine glasses, some just thrilled to see the self-appointed Queen of Maplewood being humbled for once. "You're making a scene," she muttered under her breath, glaring at Ethan. "How this looks. The neighbors will think you're some kind of thug, arresting a homeowner for doing her job." Ethan folded his arms. "You broke the law, Karen. Trespassing. Unlawful entry. You're lucky I didn't press for burglary, considering you were taking notes and touching my property." She scoffed. "Burglary? Oh, please, I'm not some criminal." "You don't get to decide that," Ramirez said, stepping forward, his tone firm now. "The law does." Karen's confident as she saw the two officers exchange a look. Ramirez reached for his handcuffs, and she instinctively backed away. "No, you can't arrest me," she said, her voice rising in panic. "This is ridiculous. I'll call the HOA board. I'll call the mayor." "You can call whoever you like," Ethan said evenly. "But right now, you're going to have to come with us." Her voice trembled. "You're serious? You're really arresting me?" "I gave you a chance to leave quietly earlier," Ethan reminded her. "You didn't take it. Then you came back, banged on my door, and started yelling in front of witnesses. So yes, I'm serious." Karen's eyes darted to the growing crowd. She saw Mrs. Thompson from next door watching gleefully, Mr. Pill shaking his head in disbelief, and the teenage boys from the end of the street recording the whole thing on their phones. Her pride flared up one last time. You'll regret this, she spat. When the HOA hears about this, you'll lose your home, your job, your... Turn around, Ramirez interrupted sharply. Karen froze. The moment felt unreal. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She had spent years making people in this neighborhood bend to her will. And now, here she was about to be cuffed like a common criminal in front of all of them. She opened her mouth to argue again, but Ethan's quiet, authoritative voice stopped her cold. Karen, don't make this harder on yourself. Something in his tone, steady, final, broke her defiance. Her shoulders sagged. Slowly she turned around, her hands trembling. Ramirez recited her rights as the metal cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. The sound echoed through the street like a punctuation mark. Sharp, undeniable. You have the right to remain silent, Ramirez said, guiding her toward the patrol car. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Karen's heels clicked against the pavement as she walked, her steps small and hesitant now. Her earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by tears welling up in her eyes. This isn't right, she whispered. I was just trying to help the neighborhood. I just wanted people to follow the rules. Ethan followed a few steps behind, keeping his distance. His voice softened, but only slightly. You can't enforce rules by breaking the law, Karen. That's not how community works. As they reached the car, Karen looked back at him, eyes wide and wet. You're humiliating me, she said bitterly. In front of everyone. You did that yourself when you walked into my house, he replied quietly. Ramirez opened the back door of the patrol car and helped her inside. She tried to twist away, muttering, "This is unbelievable." But the door shut with a heavy thud, sealing her words inside. A few neighbors clapped quietly. Others exchanged whispers like gossiping birds. Mrs. Thompson smirked, raising her phone to snap one last photo. Wes will be electing a new HOA president soon, someone joked. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan ran a hand over his face, exhaustion washing over him. He hadn't wanted it to go this far. But he also knew letting her get away with it would have sent the wrong message. Not just to her, but to everyone. Rules mattered. Boundaries mattered. And for someone who'd spent years upholding the law, he couldn't ignore that in his own home. Ramirez came back, tapping his notepad. You filing the report tonight, or I'll do it, Hamid, Ethan said. It's personal now. Ramirez smirked. Man, she picked the wrong house to mess with. Yeah, Ethan said, glancing at the patrol car. She really did. As the car pulled away, Karen's silhouette shifted in the back seat. Proud posture gone, her head bowed. The lights faded slowly down the street, leaving only the soft hum of neighbors murmuring. Ethan turned toward them, offering a tired half-smile. Show's over, folks, he called out. Go on back inside it. About time someone stood up to her. Another added, We've been waiting years for this. He gave a small nod, not gloating, just relieved. As the crowd dispersed, he finally exhaled, the night air cool on his skin. The adrenaline faded, replaced by quiet peace. The kind he'd hoped this neighborhood would offer in the first place. Max barked softly from the porch, tail wagging. Ethan smiled faintly and reached down to scratch the dog's head. It's okay, buddy. She won't be bothering us anymore. He looked around the calm, moonlit street. For once, there were no clipboards, no threats of fines, no unwelcome intrusions, just silence, the kind that felt earned. As he stepped back inside, closing the door behind him, the faint echo of laughter and sirens faded into the distance. Maplewood Estates had learned an important lesson that night. One itself, proclaimed queen, would be reminded of from a cold bench in the county jail. Ethan poured himself a fresh cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and let out a long sigh. Welcome home, he murmured to himself, and this time the words actually felt true.